Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello,
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds!
I love it. Oh, man, I have a feeling that might make it into the next version of our trailer in a few months. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Tom. How are you?
Well, first of all, congratulations. I see you rebranded. You are now the Matt Skidmore Show.
Yeah, sorta. It's we'll see. I'm very touchy-go-y about the branding thing. Like I personally just like Zach and Matt Show because it's the OG. It's sentimental.
Yeah.
But I was like, just like, I'm sure you're waiting for Yang to get back into the sphere so you can become nerds for Yang again.
We'll always be nerds for Yang, for sure. Hey, tell me a little bit. I didn't catch, like, what was the decision or the rationale for Zach kind of moving on? Like, what is there a backstory there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So just a little backstory here. Me and Zach are the same age. We have lived across from each other literally our whole lives. Like we were born both in 1999, but 3 months apart, and our literally houses have been across the street from each other. So we've been like best friends our whole life, right? And it was originally his idea to start a YouTube channel, but I'm in the situation where I didn't go to college and he did. So he has like all that responsibility. And when we were originally like starting the channel, it was supposed to just be a hobby, right? Like something we just did like once or twice a week, made a video on the weekends. But then all of a sudden, like by summer, I'm like, Zach, we got a campaign for Andrew Yang. We have to win UBI. And Zach liked Andrew Yang too. But like when you're a college student and you're like third year of like your computer science degree or whatever the heck he was doing, it just got so stressful for him, and I think I was stressing him out because then it got to the point in the fall where I'm like, dude, we got to go to Iowa, we got to go to Las Vegas, we got to go to Cali. He's like, dude, I have a 15-page paper due tomorrow at midnight. So I think it just got to the point where like I was just stressing him out, and he decided to like, Matt is kind of like your baby and you should just go ahead and like do whatever you want with it. And then that honestly was like kind of back in like December, January is really, it's been all me since then. But not a lot of people knew that at the time because I was still hopeful that Zach would rejoin the channel. Like I still am hopeful. I mean, he'll still say like, oh yeah, when I'm done college. I'm like, that's like a year. Like, what? Come on, bro. You're going to leave me hanging? But yeah, there's also rumors. There's also rumors going around that like Zach became a Trump supporter, which some people won't like. It's kind of true. But Zach and me both kind of lean more towards like the right anyways. So it wouldn't be that surprising to me that Zach ended up like going for Trump.
Oh, yeah. Well, he wouldn't be the only Yang supporter who has made that determination. Yeah. I mean, that is, what's your read on the state of the Yang Gang now? I know we talked about this a little bit when I was on your show. It feels like we really miss having Andrew leading us and unifying us. And it's weird. It's just weird. Like I don't know if this was like a big symbolic thing, but at one point I was seeing so much like drama. I did remove the blue hat from my Twitter thing because I was just like, there's blue hat people saying things I don't agree with at all, and I don't want to be kind of like associated with that. Nothing wrong with it. They're entitled to their opinion, but I don't want any kind of confusion about what I'm standing for. What's your read on the Yang Gang these days?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I actually was talking to Paget about this. She was live on Twitch the other day because I don't know if you heard, but she's on a live stream ban from YouTube till December.
I did hear that.
Yeah, so I popped in and hopped on and talked to her, and she was asking kind of like the same thing. And I was basically saying kind of like what you said, where when it seems like we don't have like a central goal or like something to unify us, we kind of just like all go back maybe towards our more like original tribes that we were in at the beginning of the Yang Gang. And I was also saying, like, I think too, you also have to remember, like, I think like probably like 75% of Yang Gangers aren't actually like on Twitter anymore that were here back during the campaign, because they like went on with their lives. Like, 'cause they're actually normal people, and the ones that are left are us crazies. And we happen to be like the most passionate and into it of the bunch. So we're just naturally going to have stronger opinions. But it goes back to the Andrew Yang thing. I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but this random person on Twitter just tweets out like, you don't have to, you can support UBI without licking Andrew Yang's entire a-hole.
I
like,
saw that.
These people actually think $1,000 a month would help end poverty. And you just see like all the different factions of the Yang Gang like suddenly come together to, to go on this person. And the more like real example is, remember when Andrew got left out of the DNC at first, and instantly we just all trended, like all came together, like 30,000 tweets, got to like number 2 in the world.
Right. Yeah.
And it felt like the campaign days there again for a brief second. And I really think that just goes to show, like, most of, I think what we're seeing on Twitter is just noise and people like that are just passionate and have strong opinions, and like little cliques have formed. But I think it all goes away when there's like an actual greater goal. Unfortunately, I think like for the Yang Gang, like, just electing Joe Biden, I don't know if that's a big enough goal that everybody is super passionate about to unify everyone around. Just because, like you said it earlier, like there is like a small portion of Yang Gang that's like, yeah, Donald Trump, woo,
yeah. So. And there's a probably a bigger one that's like a pox on both their houses kind of thing.
Yeah,
and then there's the rest of us who are like, please, no more Trump. Where are you landing, Matt? Are you have you made up your mind?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Originally, I said all along, like from the beginning, when I got on this like Andrew Yang Democratic primary train, I was like, I'm like basically a Yang or a Tulsi, or I'm a nobody, because I'm just not like a fan of Democratic politicians and the Democratic Party. So like when Andrew dropped out, I was actually asked the night he dropped out at his event by a Fox News reporter. They were like going around asking people like what they were going to do now that Yang dropped out. And they were like, will you end up voting for whoever Yang endorses? And I'm like, no, because like, like, and I don't know, like I kind of said what, like how, you know, I'm typically not like a fan of Democrats or whatever. So right after the primary ended, I was thinking about going to vote for Trump. But then I saw how he handled coronavirus, and then the George Floyd murder, and like I just saw that he like totally was flaming like the racial tensions and making things worse. And I also saw like when, like, to me, there was a question I think for a while, like among some on like the right side of the aisle, of like, is Donald Trump, or like just in politics in general, and people on the left obviously have always felt that the answer to this question is yes, but it is like Donald Trump actually a racist, or does he just like kowtow to racist because he thinks it'll help him win, because he doesn't want to turn away the white supremacist vote or whatever. But like when he started just going around like being like kung flu, I mean, there's really no way around that. Like it's directly like inflaming racial tensions. I know maybe some people watching will be like, you're just realizing that now, like in year 4, but like, hey, better late than never.
Hey, amen.
So I just can't do it. But I'm still at the same position where like I'm still not a fan of Democrats. I'm still not a fan of Joe Biden, and I can name like, I mean, everybody kind of knows like all the same reasons why like people didn't like him in the primary. So I'm gonna end up writing in Yang, and I am in Maryland. So we're a blue state. We actually like the highest number of registered Democrats in the country. It's over like 60% of the state. So we're going to go blue by 30 points. So my vote doesn't matter. So I don't have to be like worried about getting hit by like a Twitter mob saying, you're going to cost Trump to win the election. So that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you would be much more at risk if you were in Florida, for sure. Like
Yeah,
if you lived in Florida, what would you do?
It's an interesting question. I thought about it, and I think like ultimately, I think I would want to vote for Joe Biden. But not that I would want to, but I think I would have to. But there's the one. This is my one big drawback about Joe Biden and just I guess the Democratic messaging in general. It's very, very specific reason, and it's very personal to me. But I do think it's important. It's that when Joe Biden and the Democratic Party say that they want to repeal the 2017 Republican tax cuts. That's perfectly cool to me because we all know that the Republican tax cuts gave way too much money to the top 1% and not enough to the bottom. It was basically just a big tax cut for the rich. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that there weren't certain parts of the bill, certain elements of the bill that actually were good for like the middle class, even the lower class. But the thing specifically for me is as a small business owner is the 2017 tax cut included what's called like a qualified business income deduction. And that's a deduction that can be worth up to $20,000 every year. It's just like a straight tax credit. And it's basically like any small business in the US pretty much qualifies as long as you're not doing like like weapons research and like shit like that. So ultimately, like my thought process is like if Joe Biden becomes president, he's been saying like nobody who's making over $400,000 a year is going to see a tax raise. But if he repeals that, that's effectively going to be as much as a $20,000 tax raise on my business. So my thought process here is I'd want to see like the Democrats come up with what the Republicans were saying they were going to do with Obamacare, which is so they never did, is this repeal and replace. Like I would want Joe Biden to have like repeal the tax cuts, but then redo them with just like less going to the top, or maybe some would say like maybe even raising the taxes back on the top, but then keeping some of the deductions and benefits that were in place for just the average Joes, you know?
Yeah.
So it is very personal, but like, you know, sometimes you got to put yourself first. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think my expectation would be that the Biden sort of tax reforms would probably raise the corporate tax rate back to the Obama levels. I think it was like 28%. I think corporations were fine. Nobody was struggling.
Yeah, it was. I think under Obama it was 35. Trump lowered it to 21, and then Biden is going to put it back to 28. Is what he's saying.
You know, I mean, I think I'll say this, like, I'm not sure that corporate tax cut really benefited the working people. I know the argument was that suddenly companies will hire more, but, you know, companies will hire the least people they can hire. Like and they should, like, they're here for the shareholder. They're not here to employ everybody. So to expect that giving a bunch of tax cuts to corporations will suddenly like double employment, like that just doesn't make sense. Like you wouldn't hire more people than you needed to for your business, right? So why would we expect some big company to do the same thing?
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's like why ultimately that's the whole like trickle down economics theory that we as Yang supporters obviously don't subscribe to. We're in the trickle up economics theory of so like I like I'm not saying like that the tax cuts that they gave to the top and the corporations ended up helping the middle class. I'm saying like things like the fact that they doubled the standard deduction, which applies to everybody. I think they doubled it from 6,000 to 12,000. That is going to help like middle class and families. And I'm not sure, like, I know that there is certain like squeezing that happens. I think it was in like if you live in like a California or like New York or New Jersey, because they put a cap on state and local taxes at 10,000. If you were paying like super high property taxes, you'd end up paying a little more. So like it's confusing, but I think overall, like the data showed that 80% of people ended up getting a tax cut overall. So I do think like we should keep in place that tax cut for like the 60% of those 80% who need it or whatever, and perhaps put things back at previous levels.
I think you're right that a lot of people got what is considered a tax cut. But if you do the pie chart by the dollars of the cut and where it went to,
most of it went to the top, and that's the whole issue with the bill.
Yeah.
But
And
like,
then
I
for
just
the lucky folks like me who live in California, we got screwed.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wonder why.
yeah, yeah. I do think there is a this. I do think that Democrats do have this habit though, because like when Trump does something, because it's Trump, like sometimes they overreact and have to go in like this complete opposite direction. When I do
Yeah,
think
that's
they
true.
can take like a middle ground of saying like, yeah, those tax cuts for the top. Which honestly, I don't know, like if the super corporate Democrat Party is actually super duper worried about in the grand scheme of things, but we'll say they are. Scale those back and try to keep some of them or redo some of the ones in a way that maybe Democrats like better for the middle class. I do think like ultimately, I think tax rates in general are kind of so stupid just because how we know it works in this country is the rich people have their army of lawyers that they can afford to figure out every single loophole in the book. And even if a rich guy is supposed to be paying 50% or 40% in taxes, their effective rate ends up being like 15. And us average people, we don't have the resources to hire 6,000 million accountants to figure all that out. So like ultimately, when it comes to this tax conversation, I really wish the government would just patch a lot of these loopholes, like get rid of carried interest, make it so people can't offshore all their money. I think that would do a lot just to actually make our tax system work. And then of course it goes to the value added tax, which is the true inescapable methodology of taxation.
Yeah, I think the current tax system reflects what you described, which is that people with resources got involved in writing that tax legislation. And, you know, I think Romney famously paid like a 12% effective tax rate. And, you know, he was doing really well in life. And he didn't break the law. He was following the same way that like I can't fault Amazon for paying no corporate income tax. Like they are following the rules as their lobbyists wrote it.
Yep. And that was part of Andrew's stump speech is he'd be like, is that Amazon's fault or is that our fault? Be like, that's right. It's our fault. How could we be so fucking stupid to let these $1 trillion companies pay zero in taxes?
Yeah. I mean, this is where, you know, your Blair poster in the back speaks to me, because I think our Congress needs to be held accountable too. And they can't just sneak this stuff in the middle of the night in 1,000-page legislation and give these great stump speeches about how they're for America, but then kind of allow stuff to get in there that helps, you know, special interests. And I feel like Blair is a fresh, unique kind of independent voice. What's your read on her campaign? What do you think's how do you think it's going?
Personally, I'm a huge fan of Blair. I think actually out of all the Yang Gang candidates, she's closest to like her policies closest match like where I'm at, which is nice because it makes me feel like hey, there's somebody out there who sees things similarly to me. In terms of how her campaign's going, I think she's doing a lot of good things. Ultimately, though, you have to remember like it is I think a district that traditionally goes super red. But I also do think it's an opportunity because, you know, Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee and Appalachia. But I also do think it's an opportunity for the Yang Gang to make our case. Our whole thing during the primary was like, Andrew Yang would destroy Trump because all the Trump voters would vote for him. It's going to be amazing. These policies, humanity first, not left, not right forward, blah, blah, blah. Like that was our whole part of our whole pitch. Like this is an opportunity to say like the Yang Gang, if a Yang Gang candidate can win in like a red area, Yang Gang policies, the humanity first vision, this would be it, right? Yeah. So, but it is I think you do have to remember, like at the end of the day, it's an uphill battle. So, like, I'm a big fan of Blair. I'll keep doing whatever I can to help her get elected and just lay it all out on, as they would say in like sports, lay it all out on the field so that come election day or the day after the results come up, you don't have like regret or whatever, and you can just kind of take the results and be satisfied. But yeah, big fan of Blair and big fan of all the Yang Gang candidates. I don't know if you've noticed this, Tom, interviewing all the candidates, but I've pretty much been impressed with every single one. Like, like I come away like, wow, like how do we have such great people? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the folks that we've been able to talk to have been super impressive. The thing that I always think about that I usually have in another tab in my browser when I'm talking to these folks is I look at their historical district kind of voting records. And some people you're like, oh, well, this thing's like 65-35 Republican. It doesn't matter how convincing you are in your stump speech if the people are so tribal and the district was drawn, frankly, in a way to protect that party's control. And both parties do this all the time. Then you wonder, like, wow, if you had to make a 2x2 of the Yang Gang for Congress candidates, you probably want to say, like, okay, who's super impressive, but who's in a district that's flippable or that's winnable? And not everyone's going to be in that top right corner where they're super impressive and in a winnable district. Like, it sucks if you are super impressive, but you're in like a dark red district. It's just very unlikely to happen unless there's some huge tidal wave that, Trump basically implodes in the next, 30 days. But I doubt, I'm pretty sure there's nothing he can do. There's literally nothing he can do to lose his supporters, right?
Yeah, he said it back during 2015 or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, I can walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot someone. I'd probably gain voters.
Yeah, like if you told me 4 years ago, what would happen if a president presided over a global pandemic where 200,000 Americans died under his watch? I would say, oh, lights out, man. He's automatically replaced. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, but people really are willing to go to the mat for him in a way that I've never seen before.
Well, since we're here in the nerd zone, I'll tell you about an interesting piece of data I saw recently. Out of like the last 10 presidencies, or like basically like all the modern presidencies since like the 1950s where they've had accurate polling on approval rating, Donald Trump has the steadiest approval rating of any president over the last 8 years. Like pretty much every president, it's like one of those I forget what the hell they're called, but that measure your heart, and it has the do.
The echocardiogram?
Yeah. Echocardiogram. Every single presidency, it's like phew, but Trump is really just a straight line, like stuck between like 39 and 43. Where of course you had like Bush went from like 90 at one point to 10. Like Clinton at one point was like 35, as high as like 70. So, and we're like this is why I think like ultimately we keep seeing like all these negative stories come out about Trump. We really just his whole presidency, but we haven't really seen it ever change like anybody's opinions. And it's because I do really think that everybody already had their opinion of Trump pretty much on day one, and it hasn't changed since. Like you either thought he was the best thing ever or you thought he was the worst thing ever. And there's not much in between.
Yeah, let me pull up. I think I found the chart that you're talking about, or at least one version of it. So this dark red line is the Trump approval rating. And, over the course of 4 years, it's as if nothing happened in the country over the last 4 years.
Yep.
Whereas,
it's wild, isn't it?
Right? Where you look at everybody else, it is like an echocardiogram where there's these sort of, or a sine wave, let's say, there's these peaks and valleys. And this other guy just sort of like hit the pause approval rating button. And he's like, no, I'm just going to lock in the high 30s, low 40s. And that's it for me. Whereas you look at, let's say George W. Bush. I mean, that dude, okay, right after 9/11 probably goes way up. But then it goes way down, comes back up again, goes down, comes back up. You look at Reagan, basically everybody else seems to be moving around. I will say you could argue that as time has gone on, it's become less volatile. That, with Obama, which is this darker blue, it was not quite as stable as Trump's, but more stable than George H.W.'s. And I wonder if that's sort of an explanation of people are just locking in to their tribe.
Yeah, we've definitely, I mean, you've been alive much longer than me, so you would know better. But everyone I've heard too, they said like basically after like the late 90s, things have progressively gotten worse and worse and more polarized.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true. I don't know. I think it does coincide maybe with cable news and then accelerated by social media. Those seem to be the two, at least they have to be factors. Because I remember before the 90s, before CNN and Fox, everybody just watched like freaking, Dan Rather or Tom Brokaw, these kind of like very middle of the road. They're a little bit on the left, I agree, but they were generally stable and tried to kind of explain things. Whereas now, you go to the Maddow Hannity world and it's just like, what the hell? It's like two countries.
Yeah. I think that's actually a really good point. I think this goes back way predating my time, but I think like back in the 70s and like 80s or whatever, you pretty much had like the choice of listening to like 2 or 3 different people to give you the news. So there's less like I guess then there's only 2 or 3 tribes you can fit into, where now there's hundreds. So
I was debating my brother, who is one of my brothers who's very pro Trump, and he I think he exemplified this because we were arguing over BLM. And he's like, yeah, all you BLM Marxists, you're just for protest. You want to burn everything down. And I was like, dude, I support BLM. I'm not out there burning anything down. I don't even like to go within 7 feet of people. And he's like, well, I see it on the news every day. And I said, where are you seeing this? And he's like, well, I go and I search for BLM riots. And so my point is, well, if you're searching every day for the term BLM riots, you're going to find video of BLM riots. That doesn't necessarily mean the whole country is burning down, because he's always asking me like, well, what's going on in California? Like, are the rioters getting to your street yet? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we have wildfires, but we don't have no BLM Marxists like trying to take over our nuclear family or whatever.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you get what you look for.
Yeah, it's 100% right. People live in totally different information ecospheres, and like I was talking about this with somebody on a Zoom call just last night about how, like, trying to explain how like Trump's, like, how to rationalize how a Trump supporter can actually like still support Trump and all this. And one of the things I was saying is, you go on, if you watch a Donald Trump speech or go on Twitter or whatever, you see like Donald Trump saying, they're coming for us. They're going to destroy your suburbs. Your beautiful suburbs. They're coming for your suburbs. They're going to take over your suburbs. Okay. We're not going to let it happen. They see that. And then what do? Right? They go, oh no. They look out. They open the window. They look outside. They see someone walking the dog. They get nervous. They turn on Fox News. What do they see? It's their Fox News every single day, just the way our media works. They're going to cover whatever is the most incendiary, like crazy thing that's going on, because that's what gets the most clicks. And like you said, pretty much every day you can find some part of the country where there's a protest that turns bad, and that's all like the right-wing media is going to cover. And like it goes back to how kind of goes back to how in June I felt like the conservatives, they weren't able to like separate like just like they couldn't just differentiate between like a peaceful protest and like a violent protest. They couldn't see like how a peaceful protest turned into a violent protest, and how a lot of the times it was like instant, like it got escalated by police and stuff like that. And so I don't know, it's kind of like a crap show.
Yeah, it's so my brother also lately has been reading a lot of news from Breitbart, and every now and then I go check it out. I'm like, well, what are these Breitbart people talking about? And this is like their cover. So you have this right now on Breitbart.com. You got the left to protest nationwide, radical groups taking fight to the streets. Trump camo hats, of course. Then you have
that's not a bad price, eh?
That's true. That's a pretty good deal. Police rush Black Lives protester man arrest in West Village. Then they got Barbara Streisand stuff. So it's very like, if you want to be pissed off, like the stuff is there for you, and it's kind of sad that that basically we live in this world where, and I'm sure, in fairness, if I pulled up MSNBC, there would be a whole crap load of stuff about Trump. And that's just kind of like where we are. And I'm curious for you, Matt, like what are you thinking about the Matt show going forward? Like, how are you thinking of its evolution and post November 3rd?
Interesting question. Well, the goal of the channel at its core is always just going to be to like help and support like whatever the goal of the Yang Gang / the Andrew Yang, whatever the heck we are, community. But like more getting down to like the nitty gritty of the channel. I just like talking about politics and stuff. That was the original goal of the channel. Like I literally just wanted, me and Zach were literally supposed to, Zach and Matt show was supposed to be just a politics show where we talked about politics and gave our opinions. So I just like talking about like politics, my opinions. I don't know. I haven't really been too active on my channel like the past 3 months, just because I think I'd like get back and try to like figure out like with the rest of my life, like get that back together, just because I'd been on the trail so long and was so out of my routine and my business. I've like been working on that a bunch like the past 3 months. So I don't really know like what the overall direction with the channel is. I'm very the way I make decisions, I'm very like my plans can change at a dime, like no problem.
Agile. You're very agile. Yeah, it's I mean, certainly you were in it like 200% during the campaign, way more than folks like me were. I mean, you were actually out there on the ground. Has it been hard to kind of like get back to like a sustainable, normal kind of? It
was at first, especially with the virus, because I remember like it really was weird because I had literally like for about 6 months, just literally my entire day was dedicated. Like it was like wake up. If I wasn't like at an event or like filming live, it was like wake up and scroll like the entire internet and find as much information and data or whatever as I can in news. And like I remember getting back and trying to like find a rhythm again and a routine after the campaign ended, and I'm trying to like make sure I like get out of my apartment like once per day and like do something and try to find activities. But then lockdown came and I actually got sick, and I still don't know like to this day whether I had the virus or not. I was like sick for like 2 weeks and like in bed, and just like March and April and like May were just like pretty much I didn't do anything, just sit around and did nothing. But then finally I think like June, July, August, I've turned the corner personally, and I'd say I'm pretty much like back in a good schedule routine again. And
you mentioned that at the end of the day you just like talking about, not just, but you enjoy talking about politics. Like outside of the Yang 2024 UBI Democracy Dollars ranked choice, like are there other things that you get really fired up about, or are those like the perfect kind of marriage of your interests?
Well, on the policy stuff, like that's what I'm very passionate about, because that's what I think everybody watching this agrees that we really need to fix this country. But on a more just like general politics level, I just find it all very like I find everything very interesting. Like just the like just seeing like I mean, like honestly, I find watching like seeing the cover, like the conservative coverage versus the liberal coverage of like BLM protests, and seeing like that dichotomy, like I find that just very fascinating and very interesting, and trying to understand it, and trying to also think like how in the world at some point, like because ideally we want to unify as a country, how in the world at some point could the Antifa and like the BLM and the like Proud Boys get together and be friends? Sorry, I'm dreaming. That's never gonna happen. But I just find it all very fascinating. Like the Supreme Court that's gonna be coming up, I'm gonna like probably watch like all the hearings like all day long. I'll just like be at I have a warehouse where I work at, and I'll like have it up on my phone in the background listening while I work. And listen to all. I just find it very interesting. Like 2 years ago, back when they had the Kavanaugh thing, I watched every single hearing from like start to finish. I'm like a true politics nerd. I
totally empathize with that. I remember in high school watching the Clarence Thomas hearings like with relish. They were so amazing. I remember all my friends were like, "What the hell are you watching and why?" But you know, there's different strokes for different folks, and I think the Supreme Court's pretty important. So,
yeah.
What's your take on this whole Supreme Court thing, man? Are you feeling good about Barrett, and like, what do you think?
I'll say let's talk about that in a sec. But real quick, I just want to say I also my best class I ever had in school was AP Gov. That was like my best class ever.
Love it.
I don't think it was a coincidence. It was like the one I found interesting. But what do I think of the Supreme Court situation? Well, when the news first came out, like, so this goes again back to like my weird political like views that I kind of have, and like being a little more towards like the right side of the aisle. I'm personally not as like I'm actually kind of like a fan of having more conservative justices on the Supreme Court rather than liberal justices, and the reason is because I think at the end of the day, like, I actually don't think we should even have liberal and conservative justices. I think we should just have justices that have a more strict reading of the Constitution and people who have a more like loose interpretation of the Constitution, because that's like at the core what the Supreme Court's supposed to do is just judge the Constitution. Like justices aren't supposed to, they're not supposed to rule based on how they feel. Their own personal beliefs and feelings about politics aren't supposed to matter at all. Like you could be the most pro-life or pro-choice person ever, but that's not even supposed to factor into how you weight things, because you're supposed to just look at the text. But unfortunately, the court has become very politicized, and I think that kind of goes to where I came out on this. Whereas, like, even though to the disdain of many on the left, I actually wouldn't be like I wouldn't be like someone who's super phased out by the Republicans nominating another conservative justice. I was thinking at it from the angle of like, what's the best way to not like destroy the country more and like try to maybe have some sort of unity in the future. I think Republicans should they shouldn't nominate or confirm a justice until well after the election, and ultimately till after the inauguration, because we're so close. And you have the whole thing in 2016 with Judge Merrick Garland. I know Republicans, their whole argument on it is they'll say like, well, in that situation, it was a Democratic president and we have a Republican Senate. Now it's a Republican president and a Republican
so it's completely
Senate.
Different. Yeah.
And like, I get it sort of, but like, I don't think most people are going to subscribe to that logic. And like, I think ultimately if the Republicans do like ram through a nominee before the election, I don't think it will be good for them electorally. And I also don't think, though, I'm not a fan. I know then Democrats, like the inclination is like, oh, God, we have this conservative 6-3 Supreme Court. Like they're going to come after like Roe v. Wade and Obamacare and gay rights and all this other stuff. And if that is a concern, like I totally understand it, because those are very important things. But I don't necessarily think like packing the court is the right answer to that, because I think then that only goes again to serve and make further delegitimize the court, make it even more of a political institution. The Democrats, if they add 3 justices to balance it back out, as soon as the Republicans get in power again, they're going to be like, well, you cheated back in 2020, so now this time we're adding 5. And then the Democrats will get in and they'll add, no, we're adding 7 this time. And suddenly, like, we just have another institution that is even more broken and stupid than it already is, just like a lot of our other institutions. I also, and then going back again, like to just like the Supreme Court and how I kind of see how it's supposed to work. Like, I do think that there is a bit of overreaction on the left on like what an actual like 6-3 conservative Supreme Court would do. Because I was told that like Judge Judge Gorsuch and Judge Kavanaugh were going to be like these Trump like lackeys who do everything that he says and follow along with everything he does. But it was just a few months ago that they sided against Trump on the Trump tax return case. So if they were like these like had like some allegiance, like loyalty to Trump. Why did they rule against them there? And like it also like once you become a Supreme Court justice, you're in for life. It's not like Trump can't impeach them. He can't kick them out. He can't fire them. There's going to be a new president anyway. That's a Democrat at some point. There's probably going to be, for a lot of these justices, another Republican president and then another Democrat president. So like at the end of the day, they don't actually owe anything to Trump. And I don't know. I also don't think a conservative Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade. I think that's settled law. I think it's precedent. And I think ultimately, even if it did get overturned, it would go back to the states. Like I don't ever see it becoming like outlawed. I don't know. It's a very touchy subject, so I don't really like talking about it too much. Just kidding.
Well, I appreciate you opening up a little bit about that. I mean, I would say my brother always accuses me of just being anti-Trump automatically, but in this case, I think Trump has every right to nominate whoever the hell he wants. He is the president, and the country elected him. And frankly, the Senate has every right to confirm if they want to. Whoa! Shoot, Paget's in the house. We got a special guest. What's up, Paget?
Oh my gosh! Hi.
Wow.
I'm also watching your phone. Yeah. So I was sick last night, so that's why I look like
You look great. You look better than me and Matt for sure.
But it's almost noon, and I still haven't showered. So yeah. But
It's
anyway,
okay.
no. I
It's
was just
COVID
gonna.
lockdown.
Well, I actually totally interrupted you, Tom, when you were talking about this. I actually totally agree with Matt on this with the Supreme Court justice. I don't know if you also agree with him. It sounded like you were going there. But like I do actually think like more conservative Supreme Court justices haven't been bad for, for our country historically. So and I don't know. I mean, obviously she could flip and try and do so. I highly doubt it. But she will tear down ACA. That is something that she would do. So I do get that. But
and if anybody's upset about ACA getting torn down, then they should think about how they elected a Republican Senate, and the country got the government that it wanted. We have we have Donald Trump as president. We have a Republican controlled Senate. Like that's what we wanted as a country. And so now you can't like twist the rules to say you can't nominate someone the same way that Obama should have been allowed to nominate Garland, and Garland, should have gotten a confirmation vote. He didn't, but you can't be so pro a president nominating someone in their last year of their term in 2016, and then anti a president nominating someone in 2020. Like, come on, just be consistent. And if you're mad about all this legislation, then vote for the legislators that represent your interests. Don't try and turn the Supreme Court into like the super Senate.
That's so funny though, because all the Democrats are saying Republicans are super hypocritical, which is true, but like they're both being really hypocritical. It just totally all boils down to politics. So yeah, I do see that the unfortunate thing about this whole thing right now is that it's become so political, and that's the last thing we want for our justice system is for that to turn political. Like, and that is what this whole thing is setting up for. I do think it's actually very dangerous. So that's.
There is one argument that I think a lot of progressives will make is that if you do look at history, go back far enough, there are cases where like Brown versus the Board of Education, like these big civil rights kind of fundamental shifts were influenced by progressive judges and opposed by conservative judges. So I do think that whether a judge is super conservative or liberal does matter. But my view is like, well, we elected a president. He won, that he gets to pick. That's his prerogative. And if you're mad about it, then freaking vote for a president that aligns with your views. But that's just kind of like democracy. You don't always get what you want. And so you just have to, kind of accept the outcome. Speaking of accepting the outcome, how are you guys envisioning the world will look on November 4th or 5th? Do you think we'll what do you think's going to happen?
Have you guys seen I might have already talked with you about this Paget, but Tom, have you seen Kyle Kalinske? He has this video he came out with 2 weeks ago, and it's called, like, I've been referring everybody who asked this type of question to this video. It's called "The Terrifying Election Scenario That Could Break the Country Apart." And it's basically like because mail-in ballots have become so partisan and so polarized and so tribal, just like everything else in the country, polling has suggested that basically, like, Democrats plan to vote like 65-35 mail-in in person, but then it's like the complete opposite for Republicans, where it's like 35% is mail-in and like 65% is in person. So that could lead to this scenario where on election day, you literally, it looks like it's midnight, like the night of the election, and it looks like Trump's up in like 10 points in Michigan, 10 points in Pennsylvania. He's somehow up in like New Mexico and Virginia and all this crazy shit. But then as the mail-in votes start getting counted, and in some states, mail-in votes can't even get counted till officially after like polls are closed. And we saw how with the congressional races in New York, it took some of them like a month to count the votes. We could be in this scenario where literally for days and weeks and maybe even months after the election date, where we're still counting votes and we're watching Donald Trump's quote unquote lead get slowly taken away. And suddenly the states that the Republicans all thought they won, they actually, Biden wins. And then they're going to be like, see, I told you, mail-in ballots, voter fraud, they're stealing the election. Like, I honestly think it could be like a real disaster, and I'm not looking forward to it, though. As a political junkie, it will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, that scenario, Mike Madrid from Lincoln Project also predicted something similar, where oftentimes the early voters, especially like in Florida, historically have tended to be more conservative, and later voters tend to be more democratic. So it's very possible that as they start doing those like 12% precincts reporting stuff, you'll see this big Trump lead, and it'll slowly get eaten away over the next days or weeks. And then they'll overlay that with video of large USPS trucks backing up full of ballots saying, look at all these fake ballots coming in. But that's like the reality of how logistics works. Like, stuff comes in trucks and you have to count them. So, and you can't count them all within a minute. Yeah. So I agree that if the president fans the flames, I mean, people could get violent.
It's not even if. We're like, it basically, the way I see it is Trump for months now has been basically setting the stage to delegitimize the election results by every single day just saying how mail-in ballots are like this big fraud. And basically, like, because it, like I just said, like, it's the way that the system's going to work. It's basically on election day going to benefit Republicans, but then as things trickle down, as things move, no matter what happens, even if Republicans end up winning, even after mail-in ballots, their lead's most likely going to shrink during that time period. So I don't know. It's a very like a scary, touchy situation. I ultimately hope, though, like, I don't know. I hope that they're able to just count things like quickly and certify the results, and things don't get too insane. But it's 2020, so I think it's better to not have like high expectations for a smooth election.
Yeah, we should prepare for the insanity. Paget, what are your thoughts? How are you more optimistic?
No, I mean, I've said this so many times too, like for the past week, that I don't see how this is ever going to not lead to some sort of rioting or some sort of acts of destruction, acts of violence and chaos. Like, and maybe I'm on the pessimistic end, like even the more pessimistic end, but I think it's going to get really freaking crazy before, and then, you know, a few weeks after, it's going to continue to be absolutely nuts. Like, look at what's happening also, you know, across the country. Like, you know, for instance, in Los Angeles, right? Like, you know, we are now seeing people like shooting police officers. Like once you get to a point where police officers don't feel safe and they're already trigger happy, get more trigger happy, and then you add people like protesting, you know, it's never going to be a good recipe for anything. And that can be basically, that just is going to flame the fires that are already happening with this election, you know, and the division of our country, like getting wider. So I don't see this all playing out happy whatsoever. It's going to be difficult, even if Trump says, you know what, I lost, all right, I'm leaving. It's still going to be chaos, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, Haja, you bring up a great point where you have this confluence of the sort of protests against police brutality, the BLM stuff. And then if you intersect that with a disputed election where there's claims of it being rigged or stolen or, you know, whatever, the greatest disgrace in American history. And then you have armed people with good intentions thinking that I'm here to defend the Republic. That's a powder keg that I don't think we've seen in a long time, maybe since like the Civil Rights Movement or something like that. And I don't look forward to that at all. In fact, my nightmare scenario, if I want to get super tinfoil hatty, I worry a little bit that if there are mass protests that turn violent, that the federal sort of government will call in the military and will say we need to shut this down.
100%.
Yeah,
that's just like what we should be expecting at this point. Like for instance, yesterday. So I'm sure you guys know that like someone shot like at 2 police officers, ambushed them, you know, while they're just like sitting in their car in LA.
Mm-hmm.
That happened yesterday morning. Someone also was at a police officer while he was just driving his car. They obviously knew this person because he was driving an unmarked car and it was his personal car, and someone randomly was shooting at him. Like, you know, and this is Los Angeles. I get it. It's not representative of the whole country. Just these couple of instances, if I'm a police officer right now in LA and even across the country, I'm thinking, crap, like, am I being specifically targeted? And then you like, you know, it's never going to be good. Of course, like I 100% see what you're saying, because that is going to lead to some kind of military intervention, right? If cops are like, I don't feel protected, we need more backup because people are targeting us. We have active targets on our backs at all times.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then that could then escalate, because then some of those U.S. military may accidentally hurt someone, and then you'll have citizens attacking our own military. And then what? Like, whoa! How do you roll that back?
No, you can't. I mean, It's really sad and scary. I don't know what else to say.
So, hey, Paget, Matt and I were just talking about what we're going to do on November 3rd in terms of our own voting. Matt's going to write in Yang. I think his argument is Maryland is a safe district. If he were in Florida, he might hold his nose and reluctantly vote for Biden. Paget, I think you're in California, probably a pretty safe district.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Matter. Oh, you know, I think actually I thought Matt said third party when I was talking to him earlier, but you know, he's been going like back and forth.
He's agile. He's very agile.
I've been right in Yang for a while now. I personally don't like voting for the third party when we don't actually have a legitimate third party, because I actually don't really vibe with the Green Party or the Libertarian Party, so I'm not going to just randomly vote for them.
By the way, thank you, Katie, cool lady, for the super chat.
Hi,
Super
Katie,
appreciate it. Paget, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna put in your ballot?
Because I'm in California, and I do think certain number of people will vote third party. I kind of almost right in Yang is definitely an option, but another part of me thinks that if I can add one more vote to the Green Party, maybe, because I am really worried about climate change and like what we're doing to our soil and air and land, everything. I might actually vote for the Green Party just to show that, look, a third party like because you gave us shit ass options. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on your channel, but
That's fine.
you know, a third party is getting votes, and don't have to fear Biden isn't going to win. Like I'm in California, so it's pretty safe here.
Yeah, one thing that I haven't seen people talk about much is the Trump climate plan. Basically, is it fair to assume that Trump supporters are not going to they're probably not prioritizing climate and the environment? Is that fair, or am I being
There's a Trump climate plan?
Well, he has a climate section on his website, and it's mainly about deregulating drilling and fracking.
That's not a good, okay.
Yeah, that's his. I mean, he calls it the energy and climate plan. I think he combines the two. But yeah, obviously he ain't no Green Party nominee, that's for sure. But I guess like the Trump supporters probably aren't prioritizing that, I'm guessing, right?
I'm on his quote unquote Trump campaign announces his second term agenda, and I remember seeing something on here like basically like Trump's whole thing on climate change is he basically be like, we need clean water and clean air and limit pollution, but he doesn't actually say like anything and how he's going to accomplish that. Yeah. So it's kind of just like words. I think like I think overall there's two camps in the Republican Party. I think there's the climate change is a hoax and made up by Democrats camp, and I think that is actually like a smaller portion than the second camp, which is climate change is real and humans probably cause it. But like, does that mean we like redo our whole economy to mitigate it? A lot of people say no on that latter question. So basically, I don't like. I see a lot of times like Democrats being like, all Republicans think like climate change is a hoax. I don't think that's like very productive rhetoric because I don't think that's actually how like a lot of Republicans feel, especially younger Republicans.
Yeah, at a minimum, it doesn't make his stump speech a lot.
No.
Yeah,
it's not something that they're prioritizing for sure.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, Paget Nell has brought up a good point, which is that we did not get a hello nerds from you. Can we get one?
You're not going to clip this shit while I look like this. So,
okay, I won't clip this shit I won't clip it, but can we just get one for the live stream?
Okay. Sorry, that was probably really loud, and you all like had to. But on that note, I do actually have to get going, so I'll let you guys continue your chat
Conversation.
Yeah, conversation.
Paget, thank you so much for being a sort of ad hoc instant guest. I saw you in the live stream and I was like, oh, we got to get Paget on here. And I appreciate you being a trooper. I know it wasn't scheduled and you were probably just hanging out, like having coffee, and now we dragged you in here.
I was actually having my thing, but yeah, and I was actually about to take a shower. I'm going to be real. I haven't taken a shower. But anyway, and then I also thought when I jumped on here, I was like, because Matt was talking and his voice always sounds so official. I'm sorry that I thought that it was Matt's stream. I was like, oh, it's the Mr. Skidmore show. And then I'm like, oh, wait a second. This is Nerds for Humanity Everywhere. I'm like, okay, sorry. It's just that Matt's voice is so, you know what I mean? Like during the campaign, I'm just like, I hear him talk.
Oh yeah.
It's just
there's a association between Matt's voice and Yang 2020 for sure. So there's
oh god,
it's all good. We got to get Matt to do some nerds voiceovers for me.
Yes.
Hello, nerds. Hello, nerds.
I would love that too. Okay. All right, you guys. I'll see you later. Hi, guys, in the chat. Luman, Elizabeth Norris, Kitty Kool-Aid. All right. Okay. I'll see you guys later.
Bye, Paget.
Bye.
Bye, Paget. Goodbye, nerd. I don't think Paget's quite super nerdy, to her credit, but she's always a great guest.
I think Paget's a nerd.
She's a nerd deep down inside.
Yeah, like that's a lot of people there. They don't seem nerdy, but deep down inside, like their inner nerd would come out. You just have to get it.
That's right.
Can I just say, since I am in the nerd zone, nerds are effing cool. Like I love nerds. I think I am a nerd.
I think so too. You for sure you are.
Yeah. I love nerds.
There's
Nerds are
not, but if you looked at the Congress, I don't think the nerd representation rate is very high. I think there's a lot of other personality types, but not nerds.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird trying to think like the mindset and mentality of the people in Congress, because they're so like seems detached and disconnected from the real world.
Yeah, I think sometimes like do you ever follow Ted Lieu? He's a congressman from California. He has a little bit of nerd in him. But yeah, there's not a whole lot. There's a lot of like.
I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Ted Lieu. I kind of see him as one of the typical like hypocritical like Democratic politician. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. So I
see most politicians as hypocrites, so that's not that special.
Who do you think has been the least hypocritical politician that has actually won?
There's actually one. Well, there's not that many of them. Yeah. There's really not. I'll tell you someone I like. I like Katie Porter in California. I think she's been very consistent, very focused on like the real issues, and has been pushing for policies that actually help a lot of people. For example, I believe she was one of the people that co-sponsored the $2,000 a month legislation. I like Ro Khanna as well.
Yeah. Yep.
I think he's a nerd.
Definitely. Yeah. There's a few, but out of 400 plus,
but there's not that many.
Yeah.
Like and it's like on the Republican side too. Like I almost don't want to name names because I don't want to get harassed on Twitter. But like I think on like the Republican side, I think the guy with the eye patch, Dan Crenshaw. Obviously, like, I don't agree with Katie Porter or Ro Khanna on everything on the left. Like I don't agree with everything Dan Crenshaw says on the right. But I do think he's at least one of the more like consistent, less hypocritical people out there.
Paul Ryan had a good quality to him.
Well, Paul Ryan was consistent, but consistent of like Republican rhino status quoism. So
well, he was the only one that would talk about entitlement reform. I mean, the Republicans never talk about balancing the budget anymore. It's like it
went out the window when Trump became president.
Yeah.
Because Trump was spend. So
it'll all come back in the long run with those tax cuts. It's just going to trickle down and everything's going to be awesome. Me winning constantly. Matt, I know we're running towards the end of the show. Were there other topics that you wanted to hit? And also, if you're in the live chat and you want to ask Matt or me anything, go ahead, throw it in there, and we'll try and hit some questions. But Matt, anything else that we didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about?
Not really like anything in particular. Like I just like the open-ended political conversations. Like if somebody has something in the chat that they want to talk about, that'd be cool. Bounce off the chat.
Do you have while we're waiting for the chat to throw some stuff in there for us? What is your take on? Are we going to get another stimulus before November 3rd?
Before November 3rd, nah. Especially not with the Supreme Court situation that's going on. That's going to suck up all the energy in the Senate for the next month. We're screwed. I'll tell you one thing, though, that Joe Biden came out with the other day that actually made me really happy, because I really want there to be a stimulus. Again, this goes back to being a small business owner selling products online. I really want my customers to have an extra $1,000 or $1,200, maybe even $2,000 a month in their pocket to be able to buy stuff. It'd be awesome. It'd be the trickle up economy.
That's a great idea.
Oh,
hey, Patrick has a question for you.
And Biden said, real quick, that was gonna be one of his first priorities was after, if he won, he was gonna come out with a big relief stimulus package.
I would love to see that.
Sorry, what did Pat ask?
Patrick wants to know, what do you think the future of the GOP looks like post-Trump?
Well, that's entirely depends on what happens with Trump, right? I think if ultimately if Biden does win and it's like this overwhelming, crushing defeat, like where Trump gets rejected by 10 points, which at this point is a possibility. I I think that would be like the end of Trumpism. I think like suddenly all the Republicans would come out and being like, yeah, remember how I was saying how great Trump was last year? He's now the worst person ever. We need to go in a completely different direction. I think ultimately, though, if it's a close election or if Trump even wins, I think Trumpism will be here to stay for the foreseeable future. I think it would be really healthy in 2024 to have an election of like a Nikki Haley versus an Andrew Yang, like someone who's just more of like an average Republican, versus like Andrew Yang, who's awesome. I think that'd be good. But I really don't want to see like Donald Trump Jr. versus like some freaking Chelsea Clinton or some weird.
Or Hunter Biden. That would be sad. And Ivanka also not. I think I'm good with
but
that
should
family.
Larry Hogan run in 2024? Heck yeah, he's my governor. I really like Larry Hogan. He's like one of those. That'd be like another healthy matchup. Larry Hogan versus like an Andrew Yang. It'd be hopefully normal.
But Larry probably would. Do you think he'd be popular with the Trumpism?
I don't think he'd be popular with Trumpism, but he could be popular in the post-Trumpism. I remember I told you guys how terrible Trump was. Oh wait, you voted with Larry Hogan's actually been one of like the few people. Like he literally wrote an op-ed like a few months ago in the Washington Post, being like, "Yeah, Trump's COVID response has been like so terrible that I had to call the prime minister of my wife, because his wife was, I think, is from South Korea, or at least like South Korean descent, and so he used that connection to call South Korean's president. And back in like May, we got 500,000 COVID tests delivered on a plane because the federal government wasn't providing the tests.
Yeah, that's 2020 for you. Jen wants to make a comment that if the military is forced to intervene, by the way, thanks for a super chat, Jen. If the military is forced to intervene, they will show how divided they are. Jen's husband volunteers for the USO, and he's been seeing how divided they've been for a while. I mean, call me a optimist, but I believe that one of the things that separates America from many other countries is how professional and independent our military is, and apolitical it is.
Most popular American institution,
right? So I have to believe that if the military is ordered to take action against American citizens who are protesting, an election outcome, that they won't follow those orders, that they will say, no, this is an unlawful order. It's unconstitutional. And domestic politics, like you guys figure it out, we're here to protect the country from foreign adversaries, not from one party or another party. What do you think?
I don't know. I do think like let's say like we get in this scenario where like Trump is legit like claiming that he's still the president, but like the election results say it's like Biden. I think ultimately the generals, like the military, I don't think they're gonna be like, oh yeah, Trump, we're gonna listen to what he says. It's almost like the same thing with like the Secret Service, like the people that these like almost like bureaucrats, if you want to call them that, who have been there through like transitions before and work under Democrat and Republican and the people at the Pentagon and like running these organizations. I think they are like the people that we could hopefully like trust to make the most sense out of this. Like I wouldn't be looking for like to see what the media is saying when all hell's breaking loose after the election, if it happens. Like I wouldn't want to be seeing what the Democrats or the Republicans are saying, because they're going to be putting their partisan spin on it. Like I think, I don't know. It's I do think overall, like that's like the one place we could hopefully have some faith, is that those people see the bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly I think there's no shortage of generals who have bristled under the Trump kind of leadership.
Like Mattis.
And McMaster and Kelly, so I think there are some pretty strong conservative but still principled military leaders. Hopefully we don't. I mean, I think even the Pentagon,
like even Bolton, right? Like he's like totally not in line with like Democrats, but he was like yeah, I didn't like Trump because he didn't want to invade enough.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, he also talked about. I just finished his book. I mean, if you believe half of what he says, Trump is not the most contemplative decision maker. Like, he doesn't pour over the briefing memos or really kind of facilitate long, nuanced debates within the cabinet. He kind of makes up his mind almost before the meeting starts.
yeah, yeah, and I remember like when he first started his presidency, like all these articles would come out about how like Trump complained like the intelligence briefings were too long,
Right?
like,
Yeah.
too much information. I remember seeing an article from The Onion at the time, and they were like, Donald Trump requests intelligence briefings simplified down to a 1-page like large picture.
You know, that may not be too far from the truth. I don't know. But we'll see. So here's a question. Are you concerned about Buttigieg keeping Yang out of a Biden administration?
Not at all. I don't necessarily know like where that fear would come from of Buttigieg like being like, no, don't let Yang in. He sucks. Like I don't see it. I think Yang and I don't know. There were rumors that like of all like you know how Yang gets along with everyone. There was like rumors that like he got along with everybody except like Pete Buttigieg. But no, they'll be fine. I think it's actually like pretty much a given at this point. Yang will be in a Biden administration if Biden wins.
And how do you feel? I've heard some people say that will be the death of Yang, that he'll be consumed by the corporate.
Well, I think that depends. Like I think you either had faith in Yang, like back in the campaign, that he was this outsider who, even if he became president, would like follow through on his promises. Like one of his quotes that still stands out to me this day is he was like, "Imagine like you elect someone to become president, and they actually do every single thing that they were talking about like during the campaign." Like so I ultimately like have faith in him that even if he won't like become the swamp, he won't become his lobbyist friend who was like, hey, I'm never gonna become a lobbyist, then wanted to become a lobbyist. And I remember like there was a Yang Speaks episode like maybe back in May where Yang was talking about like the decision on going for Biden, and Zach, he was saying like he was talking to Zach Grauman, and he was saying not vote for Biden, endorse Biden. And he was saying, he was saying, I would tell Zach Grauman sometimes, like during the campaign, like, hey, Zach, if I start sounding like too much up like a politician, like I want you to slap me. I think Yang's he's very introspective and thinks a lot. And like, I ultimately have faith in him that he's the guy who won't become what he ultimately like was running against, you know?
Yeah, fingers crossed. I think it would be amazing if he got into the Biden administration. I think that just raises
I think it would legitimize him.
Yeah,
like, a lot more. Like he's already become a lot more legitimate since the end of his campaign. Like I don't think the media sees him as the joke guy. He's now seen as like the cool guy who saw it all coming and is helping Biden win. So
that's good. I like that. I like that summary. Scoop wants to know, what do you think are the ideals that Democrats should stand for?
A true Democratic Party should stand for like getting money out of politics, like actually like pro-democracy reform, like, but they should actually like stand up for the working class and like poor people, but they don't. They're basically just another version of the Republican Party. I think the Republican and Democrats are mostly the same in the sense that one just appeals to the more conservative side of the country, and the other appeals to the more liberal side of the country. But I think at the end of the day, they're both just corporate parties. I think we need like whole new parties in the country, but I just don't see any reasonable path to that happening like anytime soon.
So optimistic, Matt.
I consider myself an optimist, but I also try to be realistic. I'm an optimist in the sense that I'm optimistic that Andrew Yang can become president and we can make the change happen that we all want. Yang, as Scoop to what said in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of take an answer the question if I had a magic wand and I could have the Democratic Party stand for anything, I think the unifying theme would be that we as a party believe that we stand up for the little guy. That the powerful forces of money and sort of like the military industrial complex and media complex will always look out for the well-resourced interests. And the Democratic Party wants to make sure that the little guy doesn't get screwed. And that's it. And the little guy could be someone living in a coastal area that's about to get flooded because of climate change. It could be someone living in an area that's got all kinds of pollution. It could be an old factory town that's totally getting left behind. And I think those are voices that need to be stood up for. Corporations are fine. Like they will stand up for themselves just fine. But they
don't need anyone to stand up for them, but they have two parties that do.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about the debate? Are you excited? It's Tuesday.
I'm very excited for the debate. I've been waiting for this for years.
What's your prediction?
I don't know. I have no clue what's going to happen. I think the most likely scenario is that Biden wins, not because he actually does all that great, but because Republicans and Trump have literally been saying for like 6 months now that he doesn't even know where he is and he's gonna like fall apart and like collapse on the stage. So basically all Biden has to do is not suck, and I think he wins. Like the bar has been set so low that he just has to have an okay debate, and I think people will be like, yep, that's why I'm voting Biden. Nothing there that's special, but gets the job done. I think the goal for Republicans and Trump though is I think it's gonna be like all out attack, try to like overwhelm Biden. I think that they're gonna try to go after him for stuff that the media hasn't asked him about, like Hunter Biden, and I think Trump will go after him for like his Iraq war vote. I wonder if Trump will try to go after him for like the 1993 crime bill and contrast that with being like, I passed the First Step Act and look at all the people that Biden locked up that I freed. Like there's some good arguments that Trump can honestly make but so it's up to Biden to not let Trump center the narrative. Like it's up to Biden for the debate to not be a referendum, like not to remind voters about what the things they don't like about Joe Biden, and for Joe to keep the topics on like Corona. I don't want to say it because you'll get, well, maybe too late now. The bad virus thingy, the virus, like focus on like how Trump's just like unhinged and not the right leader. I think it's ultimately it'll be whose message ends up like. Do people after the debate remember all the reasons that they don't like, they're not the biggest fans of Joe Biden, or is it like, are they reminded again like, yeah, like I just can't stand Trump, like I hate watching him on my TV? I think that'll be the question.
Yeah, I am gonna go with the latter, that I think Biden's gonna do way better than expected. I mean, I was looking at the Google Trends data. One of the top things people were searching for was the alleged video of Biden falling asleep during an interview, which was a doctored video. But I have a lot of Trump supporting family and friends who have shared that video with me as if it were true. And so I think on Tuesday, when Biden doesn't fall asleep and he doesn't collapse in the middle of the debate and actually can string some sentences together, people are they're not gonna be like, oh my God, this guy's like the next JFK or Obama. But they're gonna be like, you know what? He's actually like fine. He's fine. He's not great. He's fine. And this other guy is not fine. Yeah. But we'll see. Hopefully it'll be exciting.
I do think too. It's interesting that Chris Wallace is going to be hosting the first debate, because I do think out of like all the hosts that have been announced, he's probably the one that would ask like the more difficult questions for Biden.
Yeah,
I think they would ultimately be fair questions. I think Chris Wallace is a good journalist, but he is like ultimately on the right side of the aisle more so.
Yeah.
He's definitely
Although-
not- he gave one of the better interviews to Trump back in July. I think people were talking about it,
yeah.
like
Although
fact checking Trump on the spot and stuff. It'll
if
be
you
interesting
ask-
debate for sure.
if you ask again some of my MAGA family, they would say that Chris Wallace is a rhino.
He's a fake
fake news.
He's working for
Yeah.
the Democrat Party under the pocket of Hillary.
That's right.
Total fraud.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like it's again, that's there's two. There seems to be like in terms of the polarization, there seems to be like two groups. And there, unfortunately, like there doesn't seem to be like I think people like a lot of Yang Gang get stuck in the middle because like basically I see there's the everything Trump does is the greatest thing ever, 6D chess, amazing, I love him, or there's like the everything Trump does is the worst thing ever, he's the next Hitler, like we're all gonna die. And I think like both extremes are a little insane, and yeah, I feel like just stuck in the middle.
Well, hopefully Tuesday will be must-see TV for. I mean, I would say for sure, if Biden if he beats expectations, which as you pointed out are
If
extreme,
Biden is just alive, I think he'll have a good debate.
and I agree with you, and I think it will also make the subsequent debates a lot less important. Because people will be like, you know what? He isn't falling asleep. He's not like in late stage dementia. He's fine. He's fine. He's not great. He's fine. That's the bumper sticker.
Yep. And like Trump's gonna go off the rails during the debate in some way. Like in ways that his base might love, but it's still gonna be off the rails. Like so
I'm gonna make some popcorn.
Be there.
It's gonna be exciting, man.
Are you going to be playing the drinking game on Tuesday night? This is what my friend texted me. He said every time Trump says Gina, you take a shot. Gina. And every time Biden stutters, you take an edible.
Oh man. Well, I don't drink, so I guess I might have to take some edibles. Yeah.
I don't think I'll be participating because I don't want to like be dead within like an hour of the debate.
you would have a risk of overdosing in either count, frankly, but there will probably be plenty of references to China. Yeah.
China.
Oh boy. All right, Matt, I'm gonna let you enjoy the rest of your day. I know it's Sunday, and for some of us we're very excited and we gotta get ready for the Seahawks game. But is there anything else you want to share, or how can people just remind people how they can follow you, how they can stay in touch with you?
Yeah, well, if you want to check me out, it's Zach and Matt Show. That's still the name I'm using, I think, for most stuff. And thanks again for having me on, Tom. I think this is my first time ever having my own episode in the Nerd Zone. I think I came on once before as a panel.
That's right. You were yeah, that's right. You were like a bit of an ad hoc guest, or like one of a few. But yeah. I really enjoyed having you on one-on-one. Of course, it was nice that we had the little pageant kind of surprise guest. The three of us all have kind of a unique angle on things, so that was fun. But it was also great just digging in with you. I appreciate that you're not drinking the DNC Kool-Aid and staying independent as you should be. But we'll hopefully get you on again soon.
That'd be awesome. Oh, and lastly, vote Blair Walsingham 2020, U.S. Tennessee District 1.
Yes, Blair Walsingham, Tennessee District 1. Super cool. We gotta, at a minimum, find a way to get her some sweet internet, because I don't know if sometimes her connection, that's like rural internet access, like in reality, like it really is that bad. If you had kids trying to do remote learning that way, it would just be incredibly difficult. So hopefully Blair can go in there, get some infrastructure bills going, and a little bit of UBI, and who knows, the world could be a little bit better after that.
Heck yeah. All right, Tom. Take care,
we're
dude.
gonna say goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.